Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on our webinar, RPA, an unlimited source of efficiency, which, as a tagline for the tech, does turn out to have its caveats, as you'll no doubt hear from our main guest later on. My name is James Howlett, and joining me today are my colleagues, Dean Francis and Tracey Stotesbury, who between them will cover this agenda. Dean will be explaining how RPA fits in to complete that automation picture strategically. He'll also provide us with further insights onto the sort of things that RPA is tasked with and summarize how you can start identifying processes in your organization ripe for the RPA treatment. Tracey, in a moment, will be examining how one particular sector, insurance, is able to benefit from RPA. She'll also be speaking with our special guest. We're very pleased to have with us, alongside us, Geoff Hardes, Operations Director from Brightside Group, who's kindly agreed to come and provide a client perspective insight into what it's like to implement a robotic processing automation project, working with a tech partner such as ourselves. Geoff, Tracey, Dean, thanks for being here. Now, during the webinar, questions may occur to you that you might want to ask the panel, and as usual, we won't be addressing those live as they come in, but with a Q&A at the end. So on your screens, you should see an orange and white arrow icon. Clicking on that reveals a questions tab, which I'll be monitoring throughout, and I'll put as many of questions that come in as we can. If we run out of time, we'll have to address some of those offline. And similarly, if there's any question that comes in that the answer to which would deserve a whole new webinar to itself, for instance. But before I hand over to Tracey, just a quick reminder of what it is we are discussing, because we do our best to be clear about the tech we're advocating, but even at some of our seminars, we get the odd person think that they are talking about robotic arms or autonomous cars. These things often get lumped together, particularly on social media, so we have to sort of untangle it sometimes. Now, we're used to seeing robotic process automation promoted via friendly characters like the one on the bottom left, but what RPA actually looks like is this. We are talking about programmed, sequenced, software robots following rules, taking previously manual electronic tasks and automating them. If that's what you're here for, good. So let's get started. There's an insurance flavor to this webinar, which may be central or peripheral to your organization. Either way, you'll doubtlessly recognize the challenges about to be discussed. And we start with a look at RPA uses in insurance. Tracey.
Thank you, James. So first of all, I just wanted to give a bit of an overview of RPA, what it is, to follow on from what you've said, and then where I see in the main it fit in within the insurance sector. So RPA, Robotic Process Automation, enables organizations to build digital software robots to mimic and automate tedious back office, repetitive workflow tasks. So the benefit there is to reduce cost dramatically whilst increasing efficiencies and providing a better all-round customer experience. So within insurance, what we see as one of the challenges is that quite often the back office systems, legacy applications, siloed databases, or perhaps Citrix environment can make the effort required to collate data and documents a drawn-out cumbersome affair. A lot of this infrastructure, in some cases built 20, 30 years ago, was not built to sustain the expectations of the business of today, let alone the customer's expectation of speed to be able to leverage smart technology available today in the palm of their hands. To update these legacy environments is likely time-consuming, inefficient, and cost-prohibitive, and this is why more and more organizations are looking at leveraging new alternative technologies such as RPA to integrate these internal systems. With pretty much zero coding required, these can be integrated and deployed fairly quickly, which is far more efficient, enabling these organizations to retrieve data, documents automatically from these disparate data sources, enabling a massive reduction in human manual effort and cost, whilst increasing efficiencies exponentially, providing a much better customer retention and service offering, which is future scalable. And on the screen here now, you can see some typical use case scenarios that we're coming across. This is more claims related, but you can see validation and fraud prevention, risk assessment, policy retention and renewal, competitor analysis, even simple things like change of address can require back office staff to come in and out of multiple different systems. So it's certainly an area that can be looked at with RPA technology.
Thanks, Tracy, and you'll hear again from her later as she talks with Geoff. Now, robotic process automation sits within a tech continuum, and we're going to hear now from Dean about how RPA completes that automation picture. Dean.
Thank you, James. Just wanted to really sort of give some background to where RPA has come through the digital evolution. And much of this has started initially from technology called OCR. Most people will probably be familiar with it, optical character recognition. It's been around for many, many years. This will become relevant as we move further through the WebEx. RPA is a product in its own right. So if you've got a particular process where you're maybe capturing from spreadsheet to spreadsheet, then RPA sits quite nicely. However, OCR is a big, big part of RPA technology, and the ability to capture from a lot of information that still sits around in paper format. With a lot of our customers, and certainly in certain markets, insurance being one of those, still see a lot of paper that's coming in and out of an organisation. So originally OCR was designed a digitisation, and again this whole thing around digital transformation nowadays is around just capturing information, and initially it was around just getting a hard copy document and storing it in electronic format, effectively a scan to an archive process. That then transitioned and moved now to more so when information comes in, it gets extracted and then we push it through to the process. So we're extracting information, lifting that data, validating it, and then pushing it into multiple back-end systems. But even so, a lot of that was very manually indexed. There was a lot of people with core skills sitting there, and still to this day key data into back-end systems. So there's a lot of manual interaction, which also causes things like errors, lack of efficiency and speed, and those sorts of things. The next wave of operational efficiency was workflow automation. Some people know it as business process management, BPM. And this was the ability to now take that a stage further, capture that information that's come in, but now the ability to electronically push that through to the relevant people in the business, regardless of where they are. So it could be in the same floor, same office location, or even another country. And the idea is then to push that information around in the digital format where it can be streamlined, audited, and also you can push in triggers and alerts so that information could be completed when it's needed quickly in line with business rules. These are also linked to the core back-end systems once they were completed. Moving to more current day, and obviously something a little bit more topical now, is RPA in itself, Robotic Process Automation. So as I've already mentioned, RPA, it could be a standalone product in its own right. We have customers that are already implementing this and using the technology to capture from certain processes that may be coming in from either email, spreadsheets, portals, wherever that may come from. The difference currently is that where we are still seeing, when we're talking to customers about this technology, that maybe if you're looking back through the evolution, that some people are actually not even capturing information in hard copy. So you could even sort of look back and where customers are still saying, well, we don't even capture information that comes in a hard copy, or we're receiving electronic information and printing it back out to be able to deal with it. So you can still encompass all of these technologies, and it depends on where you are on your roadmap, your transformation roadmap. You may need to look at different pockets of this technology still. RPA is just one element to help support that. The really good thing about RPA is that it tends to be a non-disruptive technology. So it's a lower risk from IT, it implements that much quicker. So it's really one of those technologies now that are being seen as a bit disruptive, but absolutely benefits right throughout the organisation. So just looking at this graph now, this schematic, and again, I'll just build that through, but the long tail principle has been around for many, many years. What we find is that a lot of IT teams, and again, they never obviously seem to have enough people in the team to help deal with requirements, new projects coming online. And a lot of that is built around and focused around the core systems that run the main business. You know, obviously they take time and effort and cost to maintain and manage, upgrade and implement and integrate with new systems. So a lot of time and effort goes into those. So where we're finding there's a lot of projects that sit fundamentally on a to-do list for an IT team. And they're things that they can never get round to, or they just haven't got the time or the money, or again, maybe the cost is not there initially for them to come off something else and just spend all their time on looking at these, which they call the long tail, or the lower hanging fruit of some of the smaller type projects. Now, a lot of customers are taking the approach to look at these processes. So these may be things that are done on a daily basis by a couple of people or teams, maybe weekly or even monthly. That could apply to a financial process where things are done at month end, quarter ends and year ends. The point is, if we can get the process mapped out by the team rather than IT, then it's a case of then looking at how we can apply robots to deal with these quicker processes and get value back, while also understanding the capability for the larger type projects. And again, a lot of the robots can be reused. So again, there's not a waste of time. And again, it's around understanding the process around the robots and how they can be built, reused and scheduled to run. As sort of previously mentioned, there's some big challenges, not just for insurance, but a lot of organisations. Information is now coming in various forms, formats, types. So there'll be portals, certainly email inboxes, which is becoming a big problem, through websites, again, through the posts. And what we're finding is that a lot of people are what we call swivel chair processing. So we're taking data from one system and we're populating into another. So that could be an email into a claim system, or an email into a CRM system, or from a document into a particular back-end system. So you've got all these silos and pockets of information. And depending on the age of some of these, a lot of them are not integrated into. So it's very difficult to pull information from all these systems and link them. So there's a lot of error prone, a lot of time consuming processes, very manual processes that are coming behind all these systems. So the idea is now with RPA is to look at how can we link these quickly and get access to this information. A good example of a recent customer is a customer service centre where there's some legacy systems that have been used, and when they log in, they have to look into sort of 3 or 4 different back-end systems to try and find the information. But we can apply a robot with one piece of data and go into all these back-end systems at once and pull back all the relevant information very, very quickly and accurately. I think the good thing to think about is when you talk about robotic process automation is that not every single process end to end can necessarily be applied or undertaken by a robot. There will be some for sure, but what we need to think about is maybe robots as being assistants, intelligent assistants that can help you. So as you're going through a journey with RPA and you're mapping out your processes, we invariably look and just make it, as we're going through the process, and see which ones are maybe need a human touch and which ones could be assisted by a robot. And that is to increase accuracy and speed. And if you multiply by that by numbers of teams and staffs and sites, then obviously even taking out 10, 20 minutes, half an hour out of each process over a year's period takes out a lot of time that can be used and spent elsewhere. It also adds time back for things like customer service. Robots obviously also need to be managed and run. Also, the benefit of a robot is it doesn't, like staff work sort of from 8 till 4, 9 till 5, or even later in some weekends. A robot can run 24 hours a day. It can also be run from in various ways, and that could even be from a mobile device and invoke a robot whilst on the road, for example. But you need to be able to manage how the robot is operating, how effective is it, and you need to see if anything's going wrong. And it's not just after the event, you want to see it as it's happening. So you want to understand where the problem was, what you need to do, and how that can be replaced. The thing is to think about is if a robot is set up correctly and accurately from day one, it will just run and run and run. There's also information as well as the standard dashboards and analytics that comes with the application, which is sometimes an add-on module for some products. We also have the ability to manage and schedule your robots. So I alluded to earlier that some processes you may run once a week or once a month. You can schedule those in to run at a certain time of the week, day or month, and just run those automatically, and they will just kick off at a certain time. So that could be overnight, that could even be weekend. So you could be maximizing the efficiency and effectiveness of your robot out of hours. All in all, what we're finding is from feedback from customers, I mean, obviously a lot of there's cost savings. We've just gone through a lot of the manual tasks that can be taken out of the process, a lot of the manual keying. If you think it in a very simplistic terms of maybe a team of accounts payable keying information into back-end systems, and if you can take out a lot of that time and effort, it gives them back that productivity to be able to deliver service either back to customers or even back to internal staff. Also, if you're a growing organisation and you're looking to apply the robots, there may be redeployment of resources, or it means you don't have to take on additional staff, which then adds into other additional costs, such as floor space, phones, and recruitment costs, and those sorts of things. So we can redeploy that resource and that expertise. And as already alluded to, the reliability and the accuracy of it, and consistency of 100% of accurate data once the robots are in and running.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Dean. And now it's time to hear from a voice of RPA project experience. Geoff Hardes is Operations Director at Brightside Group, a leader amongst UK insurance brokers, here to talk about his implementation story with Tracey.
Thanks, James. Good afternoon, Geoff. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
I was hoping you might be able to provide maybe for the audience today an overview, firstly of Brightside, but then maybe of the role RPA is likely to play in strengthening your digital strategy going forward.
Yeah, certainly, Tracey. So Brightside is an insurance broker in which we've got several brands, but we service customers both online, either direct to our website or via the comparison websites, what we know as the aggregators, or we deal with customers offline, as in phone calls coming in, which tends to be more niche specific insurance requirements. So that's Brightside Group. It's a broker which is growing in the number of customers that it's got, policies in force, as we've referred to it. And our ongoing challenge is to ensure that we stay competitive. Our cost to serve is as low as possible. The quality that we give to our customers is as good as possible. So RPA is very much part of our digital plan, something that we've implemented along with other technologies to ensure that we are remaining a competitive organisation in the sector.
Okay, so when you first decided to look at adopting technology such as RPA, did you have any kind of internal challenges that you had to face?
Yeah, we've got, as many brokers got, we work off two primary different systems, one being OpenGI, one being CTL. We are quite digital from a customer perspective, but back end there are a lot of processes which are of low value to the customer. They are remedial tasks. They're high in volume, very much rules driven, and they were costing us a fair amount to the customer, and errors were occurring as people were fulfilling these processes in different ways. So we saw RPA as something that could certainly address some of those challenges. Okay, great. So in terms of looking at which use case scenario to adopt RPA in initially, there is an element of having to map out that process. So how did you address that mapping out of those use cases, and did you gain any kind of insight from that at all? So we certainly knew there was a good opportunity to implement RPA. So what we did was we selected a partner. We then educated our workforce as to the direction of travel we were going to take, because we found that realistically we weren't going to automate a full process end to end. It was more small parts of many processes that we were automating. Which totally makes sense, and that's what Dean alluded to earlier on, that RPA is very much not an end-to-end process necessarily. It's more an assisted robot. So for us, we've got lots of processes that may last, say, 6-7 minutes. We've managed to reduce the duration of those down to, say, 1-2 minutes. So, and we've done that in many different areas, as opposed to try and automate something end-to-end and come across stumbling blocks. We decided to build more robots that are deployed in multiple systems in different places to reduce the amount of time and effort it takes to fulfill something. So we found our best source of knowledge on where those processes were was our staff, and it was always important to me that our workforce understood where we were going and why we were doing this, and embraced the automation as opposed to being nervous about it. Which is absolutely key. Yeah, very much so, because they know the process better than we do, and B, for us, we're a growing business, and it's not something which is about taking staff out. It's something which is about being able to manage more customers. Okay, great. And in terms of the internal systems that you have, I alluded earlier that quite often in the insurance sector, they're quite heavy on legacy systems quite often. So did you experience any challenges around implementation with internal systems, applications, environments? Any challenges? Sorry, Tracey. Any challenges around adopting RPA within your internal systems, applications, or environments? We faced some challenges. Certain implementations went fine. So we found that launching robotics on OGI or Proclaim or some of our accounts back office systems absolutely fine. We went through a learning exercise, and the speed in which we could build and deploy a robot, we've seen that increase rapidly, partly because, as I think Dean mentioned earlier, you reuse parts of the coding, or not coding, but the process map that you built up. So, for example, the first part of any robot would be to log on to the system. You'll reuse that step in your next robot, and also your own learning increases. We did have challenges on trying to implement robotics on a Citrix environment. And this, I'm not a technical person. My understanding is that through Citrix, it's looking at an image as opposed to the actual system itself, or an image of the system. And I understand that there are new releases that are addressing that technology. But when we were attempting to do that 9-10 months ago, we struggled in those areas. But as far as Proclaim, Echelon, OpenGI, and account systems, then we had a reasonably smooth implementation. Okay, that's good to hear. And just to clarify, yes, the Citrix environment in the 10.3 releases is available, so that's good. Great. So what have you seen since implementation, the ROI benefits to be? Many benefits. We've seen, and the first obvious one is that the cost to serve, the return on investment. So we will certainly recover the investment we made in year one, which is positive, and we'll go on to see a benefit, a financial real benefit in years 2 and onwards. It's also assisted in improving quality of some of our outputs, because it's been done in a consistent fashion each and every time. We have been forced to apply by a particular discipline in the way in which we fulfill processes. We found that many of our staff were filling a process in a different way to how we anticipated it would be. So, when you start process mapping in very minutiae detail, the way in which something's fulfilled, you find out there's 10 versions of the truth, and so it's just
well, that's interesting. So that whole mapping process uncovered that.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
Yeah.
So there was variations on that.
So an unexpected benefit, really, then.
Yeah, an unexpected benefit. I mean, the one thing that I would probably call out as a learning point for us was that when we implemented, because this isn't integration into systems, when we implemented other changes onto our platforms on OGI or CDL, then sometimes if we didn't take into consideration the fact we had robots deployed, it could knock the robots off. So, that's not a major problem, but we did need to build into our change control process something which checked whether there was going to be an impact on a robot or not. But because of the way we set it up with the control reports we had coming out, we knew within the same day that there was a problem that had occurred, and it wasn't a great chance. Okay.
And in terms of the bigger picture for RPA in your organisation, what does that look like?
That's a $1 million question, really. I mean, I think for us, we will progress. When we first launched with robotics, we were producing a robot once every 3-4 weeks. We're now producing a robot on a 48-hour basis, so the speed has increased.
Fantastic.
We'll continue down that route. We as a business will look much more towards now more artificial intelligence as far as understanding what people are saying on social media about insurance and seeing opportunities to potentially offer them a quotation if they're not happy with their current insurance provider, which is a good route to the market for us, or looking at the more Alexis Zero type technology as far as being able to answer customers' queries by self-learning artificial intelligence.
Okay, that all sounds fantastic. So, I think, well, summing up, what would you say would be the most important consideration for those to maybe starting to look at adopting RPA now?
I'd say it would be to ensure that the technology is proven in the field in which somebody's looking at.
Yeah.
I would say the service wrap, which is available from the organisation which somebody is engaging with, because those first few months are always you need assistance. You're self-learning on what is something that's new. And for me, it's important that you can do business with that partner, because things will go wrong, and sometimes you just need people to get involved to get things resolved.
Okay. And just hitting on that last note there, have you got any recommendations in maybe for people listening and how they should maybe look at adopting a partner? Have you got any recommendations around that?
No, I would say, I mean, obviously from our point of view, we're happy with our current provider.
That's really good to hear.
But, there's, I'm sure people would do their own research.
Okay. All right, that's brilliant. Well, thank you very much for that, Geoff. Really appreciate you coming in today and sharing some of that insight with us. I believe that you are going to stay for some Q&A at the end.
Sure, yeah.
Fantastic, that's great. Thanks very much, Geoff.
Thank you both. Great. Well, look, if you're not sufficiently convinced that RPA has potentially huge benefits to bring to your organisation, then before we go into the questions bit, here's Dean again to illustrate a couple of additional expanded use cases, and also he'll sign off with some tips on how you can start selecting suitable processes for RPA. Dean.
Thank you, James. The first one you'll actually see on screen was actually taken from a real-life proof of concept that was done for an insurance company. So the scenario of this was that their customers were sending in spreadsheets and spreadsheets of data. A lot of the data was the same in terms of what it had on each spreadsheet, but it was in different formats, different layouts, in different areas, and came in different ways. In order for them to actually upload this into their system, this information, which went to rows and rows and rows of information on each spreadsheet, had to be populated into a master template So what we had was a number of individuals that were in each department, and when this information came in, they were physically keying the information line by line into a master template. So this was taking up a lot of time. It was error prone. It needed checking. So this put a delay in the process. So what happened was we applied the robots to look at each piece of information that came in different formats and to extract the information from each spreadsheet and put that and populate that into the master template. Now, on average, this took out around 48 hours of the process, of the time it took from start to finish. What that happens was as well, we could build in business rules in the background. So there was consistency in the data, consistency in the extraction, and also if there were any errors that could be picked up by the robot, and this could be dealt with very, very quickly. So this was just one example, and then automatically once that was done, this could be populated into their master database. Now, again, bearing in mind what we already alluded to with the robots, you know, this is something that can be just picked up. So once a process is kicked off by an email that comes in, a robot could be looking at an inbox for one of these spreadsheets every 5 or 10 seconds, and could automatically be pulling that spreadsheet in, opening it up, extracting the data and populating that into the master template. So if these were coming in out of hours, the robot is already working on these. So when the people came back in the morning, effectively, part of this work was either completed or it's there to be checked if there was any errors. So the saving was enormous in time, and also the customer service, because they could get the quote back a lot quicker. One other area where we're seeing it outside of maybe just your traditional business, if you are an insurer, are things like onboarding. So yeah, we have one particular customer that looked at RPA to really help assist with around 6 processes that they defined. But since then, I think Geoff alluded to it, and the rate that they're rolling out robots at the moment, but they actually uncovered about another 150 steps or processes that would be applied by a robot. So as time goes on, they're expanding these out to other areas. One case in particular is for onboarding. So if you're onboarding either new customers or clients or even staff, is the ability to do some background checks. So whether that would be against an experience check, for example, a form could come in or an email, the robot could pick up this data, extract the information from it, so name, dates of birth, national insurance number, for example, address, log into an Experian web portal, populate that data, click through to the information that you need, extract the information back out of that, and deliver that back to to an end user that can then push that on down the process. There's a lot of use cases for this. It can go right across things like social media. And only in the last 2 weeks, we've had a customer that comes in that wants to do social media checks and apply the robots to run out to a number of robots that websites that they've already defined, but a lot of others as well that he can go out and just trawl for certain keywords, terms, phrases that may be derogatory in any way, and bring those results back. Of course, one of the major benefits is, again, it's all fully audited and compliant, so we can track what's happened, where this has happened, and when the robots have run. So it all forms part of your compliant processes. Again, one that some people may think is maybe not an overly onerous issue, but again, something simple as maybe a change of address form. So your customers are upsizing, they're moving address. They write into the business, send you in a letter. The letter effectively could be scanned in through a scanner. The RPA robot can then pick up that data that's been extracted and look at where that information is held in one of your back-end systems and replace the old address with the information it's extracted. That could have also been validated against a postal address file to make sure that information coming is correct. But the power of this is that in a lot of organisations in these data silos, a lot of this information is in more than one system. So we can get the robot to work through those systems, look for that customer, and then replace that information in all of those systems, saving time, money, as well as aiding the accuracy and consistency across all systems. So that was just a handful of use cases. There are many, many more. We are also going through as an organisation of building up a glossary of use cases, not just across verticals and certain organisations, but again, right across the horizontal requirements around the financial processes, the HR processes, the mailroom type processes, just to sort of help and build these this glossary so when people come in, we can explain where and how they're being used. Because I think at the moment it's sort of it's unlimited in some of the areas that we're seeing that this technology can be implemented. So just to move on from that, how would you select a suitable process, or where would you maybe make a start and trying to think around these? And as Geoff already alluded to, and as we mentioned earlier in the schematic about the long tail of processes, and maybe you start at some of the quicker wins of some of the more some of the areas where there's more manual tasks, but they don't need a high IT input and big people around the organisation to come in and look at the end-to-end process. Some examples of this is where you maybe have some peaks and troughs. And one big area is to look at is, that we find in organisations that where they have peaks and troughs in the business, they tend to have to pull in people from other departments to sort of help out, and whether that's either for a couple of hours on a day or even a week or a month, but they're having to pull in people from other teams, which means it takes them off their tasks and what they're doing. So again, look at where you get those peaks and troughs, look at the types of processes that are being dealt with, and have a look at how they're being handled, and maybe they could be applied to an RPA process where we can help take out certainly some of those peaks. Again, same thing with not just the peaks, but the high volume. So where's your high volume processes? Where is the information coming in from? Is it still in paper format? Can you capture information from that, and can you validate that data? And then where does it need to go once you've done that? So look at your volumes, and maybe the ones with the highest volume, or maybe the more urgent documents, maybe they need to be addressed first so they can be pushed around the organisation quickly and efficiently. Staff time and costs, a big one when it comes to RPA. You've got people that you've trained, qualified, sitting there doing valuable tasks, and that's been taken away largely in some cases where they're sitting there just keying in data, where it's really not adding much value, and it is time consuming. So what teams are doing that, what staff, what areas, can we take away some steps? Can we take away 20 minutes, half an hour a day from their process? Over time, that all adds up over an annual basis. It helps with your business case as well and build the return on the investment. Are there any processes that are prone to human error? What's the impact downstream if something's inputted incorrectly into a back-end system, or the wrong information's been applied into a spreadsheet? What's the effect downstream? What's the knock-on effect to the business? How much time and effort does it cost to unravel that problem? A robot, we can apply those rules, we can put that validation in there and all those checks and balances to ensure that doesn't happen. I've already mentioned about out of hours, so a robot will not go for lunch, it doesn't take sick, holiday, so we can be applying robots out of hours, weekends. So think about some of these processes that either could be pushed to out of hours, maybe they're non-urgent or can run as overnight jobs, or things of information that's coming in through email and other sources, web portals, websites overnight, where we could apply a robot to try and at least make a start on that work, or even complete it in some cases. I've mentioned structured data. I'll give you an example of a current proof of concept that was recently carried out. So things that are coming in structured data. So exactly in spreadsheets, and people still use spreadsheets day in, day out. So can we make use of those, capturing information, populate that and put that into back-end systems? Same for email. Information that comes in an email very much being printed off or being cut and pasted into back-end systems. Why don't you get a robot to go into the mailbox, open up, bring in that information, and start dealing with it? So again, as alluded to earlier, if you can start mapping out some of these processes, you may uncover that there's some steps that can be taken out and improved. It could be that you look at which steps are manual and would still need a human touch point, but which ones could actually be applied by a robot. And you can invoke a robot during a process. So you can, it could be an ad hoc process. So information could come in, you actually want to run the robot at that particular point rather than it being scheduled. So you've got flexibility to do that, and those repetitive tasks. And those back-end legacy systems, which are sometimes difficult to integrate with. So rather than add layers of integration, effectively we could get the robot to pop in and out of each of the systems, pull the data, search for data, and bring that data back into one place to be viewed. So there's some examples of some different areas. It's a case of where do you think about some of your processes, map through, again, and have these in mind as to where you might start looking to apply some of this technology. We can obviously help you if you do uncover something. We can help you look at those and find out if the RPA technology would be a nice fit. So just to wrap that up really, and to summarise on those previous elements, more people are looking at the sort of the lower complexity. So when they first engage on an RPA project, and as Geoff's already alluded to, is they're rolling out robots on a 48-hour basis. So look at those smaller processes, get some quick wins, understand the technology, understand its capability, and then grow the capability around the robots. Because you will gradually understand that there'll be more and more processes that you can apply this technology to.
Many thanks, Dean. Okay, well, with about 5 or 10 minutes or so before the end of our allotted time, it's time to go to questions, which may be a slightly unexpected behind-the-scenes experience, depending on how we can make this work. There's been a few questions submitted beforehand by people who said they knew they weren't going to be able to make it. But actually on screen now are some of the perennial, very common questions about implementing RPA that are likely to come up sooner or later on a project. But in the meantime, before I start delving into the questions box, one that we had submitted beforehand was to do with OCR, which you mentioned, Dean. Question is, does OCR and RPA go hand in hand, or can you look at these technologies separately?
Well, they are separate pieces of technology in their own right. So, as I said earlier, there are customers that are using RPA just to extract from email inboxes and put into back-end systems with the extracted data. Or they'll be looking at a spreadsheet and populating into other spreadsheets, so consolidating of data that way. There are customers, and many of our customers, that have been using OCR and scanning capability for many, many years and extracting information. So I think one of the pitfalls where customers have not been aware is that RPA sits really nicely into where there's already structured information and systems. But obviously there is a lot of information. Again, all organisations that we go to fundamentally still receive an element in hard copy paper, their post room. So, in order for a robot to do something clever with it, it needs to be converted into translatable data that it can pick up and do something with. So, the short answer is, absolutely, it's hand in hand in many respects. You cannot probably have a full RPA implementation without doing something along the lines with OCR and extracting the data.
Okay, thanks for that, Dean. This is one I think for Geoff. Having already adopted RPA, do you also see a play for artificial intelligence, AI, within the insurance market?
Yeah, certainly. I think it'll be a slow burn, but I think it will be around knowledge management. I think I touched on a little bit earlier around social media. I think there'll be lots of artificial intelligence in trying to understand what's being said in social media, and also around answering customers' queries by digesting the materials that are available today inside an insurance broker or business, and being able to answer the questions that the customers have got. So I think there'll be that Alexa type technology, but I think we'll see it within the next 12 months.
Super, thanks, Geoff. And finally, we've talked about RPA addressing many processes in claims. We touched on claims a little bit earlier. Can we elaborate, Tracey, I think, on other areas with the business that can be addressed?
Well, yeah, for sure. As you say, we have just touched on the claims management area in the main here, but as Dean has alluded to, there are many use cases for RPA. So within a finance back office, you can look at using and adopting RPA for financial reporting, aggregation of data, financial reconciliation. Within a HR environment, onboarding, validating an individual's right to work in the country. We see that quite a lot. DBA checking, qualification checking, general validation really. And within, if we looked at marketing, then you can look at things like comparison or checking, brand monitoring, looking at, pricing, competitor pricing. So, it is really endless, the amount of use cases for RPA.
Super. A good note to end on. So huge thanks to Tracey, to Dean, and particularly to Geoff Hardes from Brightside Group. Thank you to you for attending, and we'll follow up with you to see if you have any further thoughts, and we'll provide clean slides to those who request them, along with one or two other resources possibly as well. And in the meantime, of course, please don't hesitate to contact DCS if you want to discuss RPA further. So on behalf of the panel, I wish you all a very good rest of the day. Many thanks.